Today I woke up with a cold, so I apologize for any audio quality issues and any drastic cuts for whenever I cut out any of my coughing. But I also woke up to a DM saying they're releasing a new PVE scenario. So let's get into that. So today's update preview is all about the updates happening on March 13th and the 27th. Now, if I scroll through this, there is a whole lot of words, and the whole reason you're probably coming to this video is that you don't want to read all this, so I'm going to summarize it and put the spin on it based on my experience in the game. We're going to start up with the permanent servers. So apparently that's been a really big thing where a lot of the PvE players, they're looking for a permanent server so that basically your scenario never ends. Now, personally, I can understand why some people would want this. Their whole reasoning in this write-up is that, you know, it's due to players they're not able to play as often as others, or they need to return after being away, stuff like that. So it makes sense to have permanent servers. Now, personally, whenever the idea came up, I thought it was a terrible idea because it would basically split up your player base more and more and more, as some people went to new servers, some stayed in permanent servers. But the way that they've come out with this is actually pretty good. So the way it's going to work is that servers are no longer going to close, and after the settlement phase, they're going to convert into a permanent server. Basically, it's just going to be in a permanent final phase. So at this point, you'll have the option to stay, go back to your Eternal Land, or sign up for a new scenario. So basically the same as what you have right now, except right now it has a time limit. As servers end, they will then merge into these permanent servers. So the server will be merged into a single world on the permanent server, so you can switch between worlds and interact with basically anybody from previous servers that were merged into a single world themselves. When these servers end and they become permanent or merge, they will keep their original state. So this means if they were a visual wheel server, they'll continue being a visual wheel permanent server in the merged state. Except one thing to understand is that the non-visual wheel servers, any changes to the game that requires a server state update, like major scenario changes, new regions, public crisis event additions, removals, etc., new mimetic specializations, basically any of these like seasonal scenario-based things, they're never going to change. They're like whatever they are, they're stuck that way. They stay the same. Now, for visual wheel permanent servers, they'll continue on a visual wheel cycle. So when the Lunar Oracle visual wheel ends, the next visual wheel will begin on that server. So you won't have like Lunar Oracle servers and then the new visual wheel one as a separate thing. It's just a visual wheel server. So that's a good thing too. Some of the changes that will work on all of these servers is like game-based changes. So weapon balancing, cosmetics, events, bug fixes, changes to your core system, stuff like that. Those things will go through on all the servers because it's updating like the game, not the specific server conditions. So overall, my thoughts on this is it's weird because I do like what they're doing. They're essentially going to keep merging these servers together, and as a new server merges in, it becomes a new world. And they already have a world merging system where essentially if a world gets really unpopulated, they just merge it down. They basically give a warning to anybody that is still on there saying move your house over to one of the other worlds, and then they'll merge it in. So they're going to basically keep that up, and what that does is it reduces the load on the servers, and it keeps, you know, the server being healthy. So it's kind of like everybody just gets put into this dumping ground after your scenario, and if you want to continue and move to a different scenario, you can, and then you kind of come back after the fact. So it's really interesting. Now, the only thing that I don't like about this is they stated that characters that are inactive for 30 days or more, they won't be transferred to these permanent servers, and I believe it said somewhere even that if you're inactive, it'll basically kick you out to Eternal Land, and you'd have to sign up for a new scenario when you come back. So you would have to essentially do a new scenario, finish that up, and then get dumped into the permanent server to rejoin up with your friends if you were away for too long. So I think there's probably some tweaking that maybe they'll be able to work on there to make that a bit better. But overall, this permanent server thing actually should work out a lot better than I thought it was going to, based on just the concept of it. But the way they're going to merge everything together, and then keep worlds basically coming in. I think it's a good thing, and it should help keep a healthy balance between new servers and the permanent ones. Now, next up is probably why you clicked on this. They announced a new PVE scenario, and the way the marketing and everything was showing is it essentially made you go, oh, they're doing a new scenario on March 13th or March 27th? No, that's not the case. If you actually read this giant paragraph, it states this year. Like, they basically are acting like it's coming in March, and even like the DMs and stuff I got this morning saying, hey, like new PVE scenario, this is huge, it's coming in March. It's because it was basically shoved in with all of this other stuff, but it specifies this year. It's just a teaser that they're giving us. This is not coming in March by any means that they've officially stated. They've stated this year. And their official roadmap said Q3, so I really just don't see a scenario suddenly popping up here in March. So hopefully you didn't get your hopes up. So the teaser they did give us, though, is it's going to be the full map, so from Broken Delta all the way up to Ember Strand, so both the Way of Winter stuff and the eastern, southern Nalcott area. So, and it's all going to be there right from the start. There's going to be dynamic environmental effects, calling it like the Dreamscape challenges. It's going to evolve in response to our actions as players. They're adding construction mode outside of your territory, which that has a whole lot of implications that I'm not sure why they're doing that, or like maybe it's because it's like the whole map and you wouldn't want to have to, like, you might need to build stuff when you're not in your territory, I guess. It's no longer going to be restricted by seasonal phase, and the phases are now going to advance based on the player's progress hunting what they call the original entity. So the way the scenario concept is explained in here, basically to summarize, is that the sleeper will manifest and warp the wilderness with random changes. So that makes me think of kind of like the lunar event where things change during specific times and conditions. We're gonna have to see more when they release more than just this teaser, but that's what I'm kind of thinking, is either an area on the map will be affected by this sleeper or the original entity, whatever it is, and then we have to show up and stop it, and when you're in there, weird stuff's gonna happen, or it's just gonna be a map-wide thing that happens, and then you have to, stop whatever's happening. So starting with the March 27th update news, they're gonna be adding in cross-character asset sharing. So it's a really big change that seems so unnecessary. So what they're doing is they're going to essentially make all of your Stellar Stairway progress, your Starcrom, your blueprints, your blueprint fragments, blueprint collection level, all of that is now going to be shared at the account level. So the data of the character with your highest blueprint collection level is where it's going to pull all of them from. And they're also making all of your mods are going to be shared, all of the weapon accessories, all of the cosmetics that were character specific, certain formulas and certain tokens. Most of the tokens were like stuff like emblem unlocks and all that, which is basically all just collection stuff anyway. Now they had a section basically saying why can't these things like the collection level blueprints be aggregated together, and they said it's because people with multiple characters would get a huge gap over those with only one or a couple. But in the same paragraph they then say, we're also going to compensate you. We're giving you up to 40,000 Starcrom if you have a lot of characters progressed, which, kind of gives you a gap. Now, personally, I have 10 characters, and the reason why this is so weird to me is that this whole thing, I don't know who it's trying to cater towards, because there's two types of people, in my opinion, that have alt characters in this game. You have the try-hard PvPers and some PvEers that essentially have extra characters so that they have extra territories to be able to have more resources, or say in like Prismverse you can have multiple bases, stuff like that. And generally speaking, a lot of those players don't level those characters or play them beyond getting them to the point of being able to set up their territory and get just levels on them for free from crafting so that they can get specializations and not have to rely on other players. Then you have the people that play like me, where I have 10 characters, each and every one of them has a different build. So, you know, I have one for Fast Gunner, I have one for Frost Vortex, I have one for each and every one of them. There's technically 9 different effects in the game, so I have one extra character, but I do have one that's melee build, so there you go. So for players like me that are actually using these additional characters for more content, because, you know, the reason I made more than one, the first character, I did everything that I could, and then I was sitting there basically like, what do I do now? So I made another character and wanted to try another build. So now at this point, I have 10 characters that all are set in stone with their builds, with their blueprints, all specified to their gear setups that I wanted to do. So don't get me wrong, even though I'm one of the players that has an aggregate blueprint collection level above 271, I think it's over 600 because I actually play all of them, I'm going to get 40,000 Star Chrom to my main character, but I'm then going to have my main character's blueprints for all of those other characters. I don't even think that I have certain weapons unlocked properly on my main that I have on some of those alts that they're currently using, so I really don't know how that's gonna work. And, you know, I'll get over it, but I feel really bad for anyone else that's playing alternate characters to try different builds, because this is basically forcing you to have your main character's builds or weaker sub builds just because your blueprints are going to turn into whatever your highest level characters is. In all reality, like I said, it's really just those two different types of players. One set is using them for resources, and the other set is playing them to play them. These changes only help that first set, and that first set, they're not really using your characters to play the game, they're just using it to abuse resources and territories. So why are we creating a system to help those people have to play less versus the people that want to play more builds are basically getting their fun taken away from them? So on top of all the things being aggregated and forcefully like changed around like that, they are adding a system they're calling the account depot. It's being added to your Eternal Land. It's like an account storage to put stuff in, like on one character's Eternal Land, and then you can take it out on another character's Eternal Land. These items will like basically go to your space-time backpack in and out, and then you can pull them down into your current scenario with points just like you normally would. So it's essentially, rather than putting stuff in a box on one character, logging into the other character, and then taking it out, or dropping it on the ground in your Eternal Land and picking it up on the other one. I mean, it's just going to go into a little thing, like an inventory now. So that's good quality of life, but again, it really just feels like we're adding functionality for people that are kind of abusing these systems rather than the people that are playing them as full other characters. Now, additionally, on March 27th, they're doing some optimizations to resources and allocation of them. Essentially, they're adding high-risk zones with rare resources, including advanced and new resources. So I'm assuming advanced is stuff like platinum crystals, like the end game stuff, but also new stuff. So that's the key here. There's new stuff being added to the game. They stated that they want to enhance the risk reward to exploration with these zones, so I'm very curious as to how they're going to implement this. With that, they're going to be adding in new specialized ammo and tactical items, and they're going to use those rare resources, and they're going to have new combat effects. So I can't wait to get more information on that when we get closer to the 27th and they provide full details. Additionally, with these optimizations, they're going to be removing controllers and controller-related features entirely. So essentially, the way it's going to work now is your effective rewards from things like, you know, bosses and dungeons and all that, where you would use the little controller item and boost the rewards. Now those mods that you get from there are just going to be rewarded directly. A lot of the resources that you're going to get are going to be moved to the high risk zones apparently, so we'll have to see how that works. But this is a fantastic change, because one of the big things about controllers that is a negative to them is that well, not everybody, but most people will save them until the later phases because they want to get the best mods from it and the best resources. So why would you ever spend mods in phase 1 or even phase 2 in the easy mode, the hard mode dungeons, and the bosses? Because it's just a waste of a rare resource that is time gated. So instead, with this new system of removing those, This means things like Prismverse in PvP, we can go and farm those dungeons over and over and over when we're bored and there's nothing to do in between deviation spawns, so that we can also get resources. So it just means that everybody's going to be able to finally play the game without feeling they're being held back. Now, on that note, they did state that it's being removed entirely, so I would recommend using up any controllers you have before the 27th patch, or you can feed them to that crab box deviation. Apparently if you throw a bunch of controllers inside that thing, it'll spit them back out as mods, so at least then they'll be used up if you can't go use them yourself, and that way you don't lose out. And lastly, for this news update we have for March 27th, the construction optimizations. This is probably really big for a lot of the builders out there. I'm not much of a builder, but even I'm happy with a lot of the stuff here. So power will now automatically connect and form electrical by default, so you don't have to lay cables anymore. That's crazy. That's awesome. I mean, just putting down my power generators and walking away, that'll be great. Next up, we got water-based systems will now allow you to select their outputs. So stuff like when you're pulling up acid and oil, based on whatever region you're at, you're gonna be able to actually choose, instead of getting water, like currently you get water and acid, you'll just be able to just choose acid. Or if you're in a place that's like all three of them, then you can just choose one of them. That's the way they explained it, it sounds like. And additionally, you can now move like the crude oil and the crude acid and all that stuff through water pipes. So that was like one of the big kinks in automation that really just like turned me off of a lot of the automation, was having to not be able to pipe that stuff and have to go manually move it all the time. So that's a huge change for me. And the last big one in their optimizations is that when you go to place your territory, it's going to auto clear the trees and rocks, so you don't have to do it manually anymore, which was always such a pain, especially when you're trying to drop a base quickly in PvP. So I hope this version of news made it so that you didn't have to read, and you could listen to my nasally voice talk about it. And if it did help you out, there's going to be more guides and tips and other videos. One will probably show up here on the left, and then the whole playlist will be on the right. And I'm going to go back to dealing with this sinus and cold, flu, whatever it is.